So I think I just stepped on a fire ant's nest. And in my opinion, they picked a bad spot. So now they're kind of having a fire drill. All right, hey everyone. So it is April 24th in the garden and things are really starting to warm up, and it is that time of year when the weeping cherry here is flowering, and just look at how perfect it looks. And I think it's gonna be nice for the next few days. But speaking of the garden, let's take a look at a couple things that I noticed. If you take a look right down here, we have a potato. So this is one of the 62 potatoes that I planted on April 2nd. And I know those numbers because I was just editing that video. So we actually have quite a few potatoes popping up. Another thing that you might miss if you don't look closely here, my potato is growing right in the center of this dandelion. This is awfully close. So that's out, and you can see the potato a little bit better now. And this one might be the furthest along right here. Ah. Wow, am I startled. I just touched an onion. I thought it was an ant coming to get me. This is gonna be rough. Where are they? Anyways, what I was about to point out is that if you look closely, you'll also see that the other side of the row here has some potatoes. And for a second, I was starting to think, well, maybe they haven't popped up yet because it took me about an extra hour to get those in the ground. So right down here, just a few feet past the fire ants, we've got a nice green looking one right here. And that is most likely one of those bag potatoes. If you had any question about whether or not that was gonna work, it's gonna work. It looks like there's nothing in this row except a few onion bunches. So if you take a careful look, you can actually see that there's a little bit of darker spots here as we walk along where the center of the row is. That is where I planted those additional seeds. And I think it's a little darker because I compacted the soil just a little bit more there. So I have gotten a little bit of rain here and there, but I haven't watered anything in this row yet. Not the potatoes, not any of the direct seeds. And how do I know these are the direct seeds popping up and not weeds? I have one easy way to tell. And it doesn't have anything to do with Sparky there. If we take a look, we'll see we've got a few little tiny things growing, and it's a little hard to see. But down here, we've got a little purple one, a little green one, a few other green ones here, and we've got fire ant. There he goes. What we should be looking for is a grid pattern. So even if you don't know what to expect as far as what the leaves would look like for those seeds you planted, you should be able to identify some sort of pattern based on the grid pattern that you used if you used a seeding square like I did. So right here, it's probably a little hard to tell, but I'm gonna say that this one right here, this little green one, and these ones right here are most likely the seeds that I started first. And I tried to forget about this, but now I just had a flashback. Oh, that's pretty much the worst. I think these are the seeds I spilled. So I put them in a bowl without putting any weight in there, and the wind just blew it over. If we step a little bit further over this way, we can see up in the corner, we've got a couple more of those green looking plants, a couple down here, here, and I'm feverishly looking to my left and my right to avoid any fire ants right now as I'm doing this. So as far as the seeding square goes, I am seeing that the grid patterns here, here, and pretty much all the way down, those are all germinating. So this one right here might look like the most distinctive grid pattern that I can see. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4. But that's all we're really looking for at this stage. And that's about as close as I'm gonna look at that row right now, because now that the weather is warming up, there's just an infinite list of things that I could be doing. And I really have to use my time wisely. And that is why I almost always prioritize putting landscape fabric down. The more time that I don't have to weed, the more time I can do other stuff. So I could stand here all day and just look at how nice the sunset looks with the grass. But I was thinking of trying to get something done before the sun goes down, something that would help give me a little time back in the future. So I thought I would add a little bit of landscape fabric to one of my most problematic areas of the garden. So right back here, it doesn't look that bad right now, But with the way things are growing, I know it's gonna be really bad in just a couple of weeks. I could spend about 20 minutes right now and just clean this up, another few minutes, put some landscape fabric down, and I won't have to weed this all year. Or I could not do that, and then there'd probably be 2 to 3 times this year where I'm spending at least an hour doing that. So I'm gonna take care of that right now. So that looks a little better to me. And I know right now it probably just looks like a little counterintuitive for the garden to just cover stuff up and put something that kind of looks like plastic down. And if I'm being honest, this is the first time I'm trying out this landscape fabric. That roll is 1,800 square feet. When I first bought that roll, I thought it was just 3 feet wide. And it wasn't until just a few minutes ago that I realized it's all folded. So that's 1,800 square feet, and that thing is pretty heavy. So if this holds up throughout the summer, those 30 minutes of doing this work are gonna pay off about threefold this year. In a month or two, there's just gonna be plants everywhere. And this is gonna be one of those nice few clean paths that are actually really nice to walk on at that time. So I'm pretty happy that this is done now, and I can focus on something else next. So it's that time of year again. We have frog eggs in the pond. And look just how tall this asparagus is. That's at least a foot tall, and this is all within a week. And just take a look at this nice clumping of them right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I was really wondering when that asparagus was gonna pop up. And now there's no question about it. It is April 22nd, and it is also Earth Day. So from now on, Earth Day means asparagus. And it's not just popping up over there. I actually have a real tall one right here because I planted so many the first year that now I have this whole section of overflow, and it's all in front of the planter here and also in the back. And did I mention those frogs make a lot of noise this time of year? So those frogs are making their calls, and they're trying to attract more frogs to come hang out in this pond this time of year. Thankfully, it only lasts about a week. Otherwise, I think I'd lose my mind completely. So these soil blocks are just beginning their first day of acclimation. And on the first day, you really don't want to give them too much sunlight, just a little bit. And these have already been outside with me for about 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm just gonna slide them back here into the shade, because the worst thing I can do right now is give them too much exposure to the sun. And when it comes to acclimation, I roughly follow a 5-day schedule for bringing my plants outside and acclimating them to the sun. On day 1, I try to give them something like 20 to 30 minutes, but not too much if it's too sunny. And day 2, I'll bring them out there for about an hour. Day 3, 2 hours. Day 4, maybe 3 to 4. Day 5, 5 to 6. And then after that, they can pretty much just stay outside for as long as they need to. But you do want to be a little bit careful. If it's really sunny one day and cloudy on the other day, those don't exactly equal the same. So you don't want to give them 1 hour of just shade and then assume the next day they can have 2 hours of high heat from the sun. You really have to adjust for that, and it just takes a little bit of time. Just think about yourself going to the beach. Would you be outside for that long if the sun's that hot? Maybe, maybe not, but the plants, they wouldn't be. And the reason I want to get my soil blocks in the ground by next week is that these will outgrow the soil that they're in here in just a matter of a few days. And just to show you, you can see that these roots are already growing through the tray. So the longer that they grow through the tray, the more likely they are to be damaged when I pull them out of there. But I have to make sure that these are acclimated to the sun before they go in the ground. So that's why I'm starting the acclimation today, and that's why I got to get them out of there real fast. So I'm back over here on this side of the garden, and right behind me I've got a birdhouse. And if you look closely, you might be able to see or guess what that's made out of. And if you couldn't tell, that's made of cork. But that's not why I'm here. So right behind me here, we've got my 10 by 20 tray of just brassicas. This one's been a little bit of a mess when it comes to acclimation. It's been a little bit of a mixed week in terms of weather. Had a lot of cold weather, windy weather, rainy weather, and they've gotten about 3 days over the course of 8 days maybe. And ideally I would have started these ones a couple of weeks earlier this year, but I just didn't get around to it. And I'm also going to be testing out how well these do against heat tolerance. A few of these varieties specifically said they were good against the heat and had strong heat tolerance. This is the 3rd day of acclimation, and I just put them in a spot that would be partly sunny, partly shady, and they seem to be doing pretty good here. Broccoli, so we got Happy Rich, we have Eastern Magic, and we've got Monty. And so far Monty is looking the healthiest, and followed by Happy Rich, but some of these are a little leggy, a little all over the place. Eastern Magic is coming in 3rd place. So on this side with the cauliflowers, this is the Fujinama, and this doesn't look good at all. I might not even plant them if they end up like that, maybe only a couple. Over here we have the Amethyst, I guess, and Punta Verde. So these are the nice spiral shaped ones. I've grown these in the past and they did okay. I'll say that the hardest thing about growing brassicas, for me at least, is that, well, there's 2 things. One, they get attacked by the infamous white butterfly. And if you're a gardener, you know what I mean. And then secondly, they really just tend to bolt right as you're about to have a good time. So right as these are forming like a nice broccoli head or a nice cauliflower head, you'll notice that the head starts to go into flowers individually. That's when your plants start to fly away, and you don't really have many other options outside of eating it or just telling everyone who visits your garden that, yeah, you grew it, but it bolted. So I don't know what you get out of that, but I feel ya. This is roughly 2 feet tall and it looks delicious. It's gone from questioning whether or not asparagus are gonna pop up or not to there's no question about it, and this is just packed. It's gonna be a good year for asparagus over here. And while we're checking in on things, the peas that I planted are looking pretty healthy right over here. They seem to be popping up in each one of these planting spots. And again, that's something that I haven't watered yet. I haven't watered them at all. Don't really worry about that too much. Just wait for the next rain. However, if it's been like 60 days without a rain and it's 80 degrees, well, you should probably be thinking about other things anyways. Like, how are you going to drink water, not the plants? I think he wants some corn. I gotta get him some corn. Then maybe we can be friends. So it's April 25th, and here are all the onions. So the peppers are doing pretty good too. This is the tray of mostly tomatoes that was started 5 days ago, so we've got good germination amongst most of them. Got the soil blocks down in here, brought those from outside inside, and a miscellaneous tray. So we have the guardian of the plants. Make sure to tap the like button for her. So my patio tent here is decapitating all my plants today, apparently. One of the worst things ever are these patio tents. So there comes a time in almost every gardener's career where they have to do this one thing, and they dread doing it. It's counterintuitive and it just doesn't feel right. And that is thinning your plants. So right here in front of me, I have a tray full of peppers. And if you're wondering where these peppers came from, well, I started them from seed, and I started those seeds on April 9th, and today it is April 28th. So it's been just under 3 weeks since I started these, exactly 19 days. And just from a quick visual inspection, I think they're about ready to be thinned out. So what does that exactly mean? Well, if you take a look at this tray right here, it's actually made up of 6 individual trays. And if I take one of these out like this, you can see that there's 12 plugs. And if you look at the peppers closely, you'll see that some of these plugs have more than one. And the reason they have more than one is because when I'm starting seed, I like to overseed, meaning I put more seeds than I need to in each tray. And that simply ensures a higher chance of germination. But as you can see, I now have more peppers than I need, and I want to select the best looking peppers from this tray and otherwise thin out all the other peppers. So there's a few things that I'll consider when I'm thinning my peppers, and in general, that will apply to almost all different types of plants. So looking at this tray, I have 2 different types of peppers. On the left, I planted one variety, and on the right, I planted another variety. So the most important thing for me is making sure that I have enough peppers, but once I have a certain amount, I really want to thin them out and give the better pepper of the 2, give that one the best chance to survive and give it the most soil to work with to start. So I'm going to take a look at my 12 plug seed trays here and decide which of these I want to thin out. So if there's only one plant growing in a plug, I'm going to leave it as is. And if there's several, but they're all still very small, I'm also going to leave those as is. The candidates for thinning are going to be the bigger ones in here that are sharing a plug. So I'm going to go one by one, and right here, I'm going to say that I don't need this one. Oh, it's gone. So and then this plug right here, you can see there's 2, and we have one leaning, and I'm just going to pluck that out. That might have, oh, That one might have been a little bit taller or bigger than the other one. I'm not too particular. As long as they're close, I don't overthink it. Over on the front here, we're gonna cut this one out. And on the back, I'm gonna cut this one. Get out of here. And then right in here, this is a small one and there's a much bigger one right next to it. And I'm gonna cut that out. And if I look on this side, I actually have something else growing in here. I don't know what that is. And because it's a small grass-like looking thing, I just plucked it out and it didn't pull any soil with it. If it was another pepper or tomato or big variety, I would use scissors. One tip is just to never pull these by the plant when you're doing thinning, because that will pull a lot of the soil that's in there with it, and that also has a chance to disrupt the roots of the plant you want to leave in there. So you should always use some kind of snips or scissors when you're doing this. So this side right here looks clean now, and now I'm going to take a look at the other side, and this is where it can be a little bit tough to decide. The front here, this one didn't germinate, and that's unfortunate because these two right here, we had 2 each. So what I think I'm gonna do is probably just thin 2 of those out. So I'm gonna go ahead. So in the back, I'm gonna go with this one right here. It's got some wider leaves than the tall one. There you have it. We now have 11. Ideally, we would have had 12 plugs in here, but it is what it is. And I will say it's possible to leave 2 in each plug and then try to break them up and pot them individually. I just don't really like to do that because I usually plant enough where I'm counting on not having a couple from each tray. So if only 4 of these germinate, I'm fine with just having 4 instead of 6. But look at all these dead peppers. They tried their best. And now we have 1 plant per plug. So I'll admit that now looking at this tray, it just doesn't feel as fun as when there's just tons of peppers in there, but it's gonna be better off in the long run with just 1 per plug. It'll give each one of those a better chance to grow, and we're still gonna have more peppers than we really know what to do with in just a month here. All right, well, it is now May 2nd, and I have a little bit of thinning to do. I've got my tray of tomatoes right here. Those need to be thinned, but also this is day 1 of acclimation for these plants, so they can't be outside here for too long. So I'm just gonna cut them and bring them back inside and put them under the tray. They'll come back outside tomorrow for a little bit longer. And then of course we've got the Brassicas, which in my opinion, these look a little too nice to cut, but I think I'm gonna have to thin these out today. So we're gonna do that after we do the tomatoes. So I haven't talked too much about my tomatoes yet. So in this 10 by 20 tray, 5 out of 6 of these individual trays, they're tomatoes. And then one of these trays has peppers in it, and those are kind of slow moving right now. So these tomatoes have only been out here for 15-20 minutes, and I can already tell they're starting to take a little bit of sun. So I gotta do this quick. So we're gonna start with this one right here. We have on the left, Winter Red, and on the right, Gardener's Delight. You probably haven't heard of Winter Red unless you watch my channel, because it's just seed that I collected from the darkest looking tomato that I found at the end of the season. It was all the way in December, still had some real red tomatoes, and it's been producing pretty well since. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start by thinning out this one, and we're just gonna take whichever one looks slightly worse off from each one of these trays. This one right here is tiny, that's an easy one. The little one right here in the corner. Which one of you two want to go? These are both good, but I can see I've already burnt this one, so I'm going to cut that. This one right here. This one looks a little worse off, actually. We're going to take that one out. And I'm going to do next. Let's cut this one. It's just in the way. Get out of there. All right, so now we have 1 tomato left in each one of these plugs, and if you can see on the bottom there, the roots are growing, but you really don't see a ton of roots outside of the little ones on the side here. So these have a little bit more that they can grow in here. I think they'll be safe to grow for the next 4 to 5 days as I acclimate them outside, maybe about a week. And instead of up potting them, I'm just gonna go direct into the ground. So before I finish off the rest, I'll tell you the other tomatoes that I'm growing. We've got a San Marzano, we've got a Roma. These are both effectively plum Roma tomatoes. Then we have Early Girl, and then after that we have Lemon Boy. Lemon Boy is a kind of like a medium-sized yellow tomato. On the corner I've got Strawberry Fields. That was a seed from Johnny's from last year. I collected the seed off of it, so we're gonna see how year 2 of that one goes. Then we got Big Beef next to it, similar situation. Got some Apple Yellows, Sun Gold, Gardener's Delight, Winter Red that we already talked about. So every one of these plants was grown from seed that I collected, with the exception of the San Marzano. That's new for me for this year. We'll see how that goes. But as you can tell, if you look at this tray as a whole, you really can't tell that any one of those is better or worse than the other. Anyways, I gotta get these back inside, so I gotta cut them quick, so let's do it. So next up, I have to thin these, and then I was also thinking that I might even be able to plant these today. Not bad. A little nutty. All right, well, you might be able to tell that this is gonna take a little bit, so why don't we go ahead and work fast. All right, so I'm gonna pause for a second. As I was going through all of the broccoli and cauliflowers, I had 2 thoughts. One, the cauliflower was actually looking pretty good. It's looking a lot stronger than those broccolis I was looking at. And number 2, I actually don't think this is a good use of time, just because I was thinking I could plant these right now. And if I'm planting these right now, I'm gonna have to pull each one of the plugs out. And when I'm taking them out and I'm lining them up, it's gonna be a lot easier to see which of the plants looks the best, and then it's a lot easier to just thin them out once they're in the ground. So I think what makes the most sense is for me just to pick the row right now, clean it up, make sure it's ready to get these in the ground, and put them in there. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and put my brassicas in this row right here, but the landscape fabric is a little messy. It's a couple of years old, and I just replaced these ones right here, and I think these ones just look too good. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of this real quick, because I wanna make sure I know where the border of the row is before I start planting. So let's do that. Okay, so we got the landscape fabric down, but as I was doing that, I just had a little bit of a light bulb moment. And as I thought of it, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to try this or go with this, because this actually is a big change, but I think I'm gonna do it. So here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna be turning my winter garden into my summer garden, and my summer garden into my winter garden. And I'll explain why. So this structure right here behind me, I built this 2 years ago. And the main reason for building that was so that I can trellis my tomatoes and my peppers all the way up there so that they have a chance to grow as tall as they possibly can. Now, with this change, I'm gonna lose that. And that's a big change. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this. But the other way that I can reuse this structure is to use the concept of a shade house or a shade structure. And so this is already framed out to put a shade cloth on, and I have enough space under there that I could put all of my shade loving plants in there. So I think I'm gonna give that a shot this year. It feels like a big change, and it is, but one of my key principles of gardening is to always try new things, even if they don't seem exactly right. And for that reason, I think I'm gonna do this year. And with that said, I'm gonna be using this row, and maybe even a little bit here, but definitely these 2 rows to plant my broccoli and cauliflower. So now I have a little bit more weeding to do, but it's all for the greater good of the garden here. I had one more piece of landscape fabric from the other garden bed that I used over here for these first 2. So one thing that was kind of bugging me before was how bad these landscape fabrics were. And now they're almost exactly 2 feet all the way down, so it looks a little bit cleaner there. This section right here is also close to, but a little bit bigger than 2 feet. This right here is 2.5 feet. And I chose to do that because I put this structure in after I put those initial pieces of landscape fabric down. And I just didn't like how when you walk down the path, you were just walking right into a pole. I still have a few adjustments to do over there, but I'll take care of that another day. I don't want to lose too much time because I got to get planting. All right, so I think that looks a little bit better, and that fabric just doesn't look as good, and it seems like it cuts a little too easy, so I'm not sure how long that's gonna last, but I only had 2 options, and that felt like the better of the 2 options for that row. So I may replace that one in the future, but for now, that's good enough. So this row, if you wanna guess, I'll let you guess now before I say it. Was your guess 17.5 feet? I didn't think so. So with this row being just under 18 feet long and broccoli and cauliflower always preferring just a little bit more space, I think what I'm gonna do is try to do about 10 plants on each side and make it so that they're kind of spaced at a diagonal. That should give each one of those plants about 1.5 square feet. So I'm gonna plant about 20 on this side, and then I think I can get at least 20 on this side. It's a little bit wider in some spots, so maybe we'll get a little bit more. So technically I have 36 broccoli and 36 cauliflower, which is a total of 72. And I can plant about 40. So I'm gonna try to avoid overcrowding my plants and really just plant the best ones that are in those trays. All right, so I was just looking at the tray and these ones look the best to me. So I'm just gonna start with these. So these are broccoli and the variety is called Monty. And this year I selected my broccoli and cauliflowers generally based on heat tolerance. So I'm hoping that with the heat tolerance and putting up some shade cloth, I might actually see some broccoli this year, but only time will tell. So let's get planting. Typically just squeeze the plug like this on the end of it, and at this stage, usually the plant is strong enough where you can tug it a little bit and pull it out. And this one's gonna start right on the corner here. I wanna use as much of the space as I can, so we're gonna start pretty close to the 0 marker here. I've got my garden knife. I'm just gonna dig up a little bit here. So we got some old roots in here, or maybe new roots. Those might be my kiwi roots, or even the fig roots, I'm not really sure. And we're gonna go ahead and plant that just like that. And I've got my tape measure lined up, so now I know exactly where 1.5 feet is. It'd be right here. So I'm gonna go and plant the next one at 1.5 feet. And we'll go ahead and plant that. And there are 2 in here. Of these 2, this one's falling over a little bit. That one looks a little nicer to me. I'm just gonna cut this one. Kind of pains me to do that, but everything will be all right. Well, I think you know where this is going, and this is gonna take a minute, so why don't we work fast? So just like that, we've got 18 broccoli in the ground now, and I decided to do 5 collards. So we did 6 broccoli, 6 broccoli, 6 broccoli, 5 collards. And overall, I think I'm happy with that to start. And since a lot of the plants are still small and a little bit brittle, I decided to take these stakes that were left over from last year and just snap them in half and use them to prop up the plants just a little bit. So these really don't need that much support, you just want to keep them off the ground. And this time right now, just before sunset, this is what I call bird hour. All right, so it's May 3rd, and it's a good day for birding. It's 80 degrees outside, real nice day. Birds are everywhere. I think that is a brown-headed cowbird. Kid you not. Brown-headed cowbird right up there in the tree. Anyways, so what I'm up to this morning is writing out labels for my plants. I put a whole bunch in the ground yesterday, and the worst thing I could do is forget to label them and forget what they are. So I'm using these large popsicle sticks, and these are 8 inches long, and I think they're a little bit bigger than 1 inch wide. And these are really helpful later in the season when there's so much growing and it's almost impossible to tell what each plant is. You can still just barely manage to find these and see what it is. We started with Monty yesterday. We'll put that in here. Then we did Eastern Magic. And that's why we're putting these labels down. I was already second guessing which side of the row I started on. And I put the labels in the wrong spot at first, but then I remembered to swap. And I also realized that one of my collards already snapped in half. So that's a little unfortunate, but that's why I have extra plants here, and that's why I don't plant them all at once. I can take one of these collards and go put that in there. All right, so I was about to get these cauliflower planted, but then, slight change of plans. I got a package delivered, and this probably doesn't look like much, but I'm hoping it's gonna make a big difference. So right here, this unwieldy package, covered in plastic, my drag dress? No. Oh, this is shade cloth. And there's something about it that doesn't feel right to me when I just opened this. It feels like a trash bag that's been diced up. But this is 40% shade cloth, or at least it's supposed to be, and it's about a 20 by 10. So what I was thinking is putting it up on the roof. So I think I'm gonna start with this corner right here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and do this, and then I'll pull it all the way through. This is just temporary, we'll say. I'm trying to avoid using zip ties. I think the shade cloth will last about as long as the sisal, and I can always reinforce the sisal later. I'm really excited about this now. So I gotta figure out which way is the long way. I probably should have checked that before I got up here. So this kind of looks like I'm putting a trash bag over my garden, but I assure you, at least that wasn't my plan. Starting to feel like the wide way is the long way, and I had it laid out, but it might have rotated when I just put that corner on. Oh well, we'll get through it. All right, well, it's the next day, and I have to say that the shade cloth is really nice. There's nothing quite like just sitting under this 40% shade cloth and avoiding the sun. And I'll say that it's already that time of year where I feel like I've been landscaping, weeding, and doing garden tasks for the last several weeks. And now that the sun is out and the temperatures are going up, I'm feeling a little bit of that exhaustion. So having this shade cloth above me does really help. So even though I didn't get my cauliflower planted yesterday, today I get to plant them under the luxurious shade cloth right here. And what a great $20 investment. So even though I think I might have a little bit of trouble trellising up my tomatoes this year, I think it's worth putting the shade cloth here. It feels really nice. It almost feels like I'm under a tent, and you just can't beat it with the way the sun is. So for today, I was thinking of trying to get all of my cauliflower planted in this row right here. And this is historically where I've had some tomatoes and a lot of peppers. And I think this will be a just fine spot for the cauliflower. Now, if I decided to do the shade cloth here about a month ago, I might have changed how I had the rows inside this section, because I think a better option for the cauliflower might actually be along this outer row, just because it seems like that's going to get a little bit more shade than having this section right here be the cauliflower row. And I'll say that the peas probably prefer a little more sun than to this shade, so those peas might have been better off over here. All right, so garden exhaustion is starting to kick in. When you are planting quite a few plants, you have to do a lot of up downs, and once you get to a certain number, your legs just don't like it that much. So I completely forgot, but today is actually my last frost day, and that's a reminder that I have to start my gourds. I completely forgot to start those, so at some point today, tomorrow, I'm either gonna direct seed them, start some indoors, or both. But I probably should have started those last week. I'm moving a little bit slower than I have been in the last few weeks, so I wanted to point out that I brought a garden chair out today because I keep looking at my to-do list and my brain just keeps saying sit. And I'm like, I can't do that, brain. I gotta plant. But the next thing that I want to do is plant these lettuces, because these are still in those tiny soil blocks, and there's a good chance that the roots are growing across the different soil blocks. Just look at how big these Chinese cabbages are. These Chinese cabbages are pretty big for very small soil blocks. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are ready to be planted. And as far as the lettuces go, 2 are red and 4 are green. I was thinking about alternating them, so I will probably do something like green, green, red. No, that doesn't make any sense. Green, red, green, red, green. But then we have an extra green. Oh well. All right, so I think the first section of lettuces will be around here because I've got my parsley right here. I planted a whole bunch of dill. Feels like forever ago, but it's finally popping up right here. Either way, I think maybe like right here is where we'll start our lettuces. Only question is the carrot. Do we want to leave the carrot or should I pluck the carrot? Tell me in the comments. All right, so these can be a little tricky to take out, so I'm just gonna go ahead and see if I can't scoop under. So this is a Bib lettuce. It's got more than one growing in it. I'll thin them, I think, after I get them in the ground. But I'm just gonna go ahead and make a little. We don't want it to be too deep, pretty much just on top of the soil here, just like that. So there it is. It's not the prettiest lettuce planting you'll ever see, but I'm optimistic that it'll grow.
I'm so exhausted today. I'm having a hard time even being optimistic right now. Wow, I've got a lot of soil blocks to plant. This might take forever.
So lettuces really only need about 4 inches of spacing, and they'll kind of grow out and cover the ground, so you don't even really need to mulch it. I could leave the chips here right now, but I think this is just going to be easier to move them all at once and then to plant them. And these soil blocks are so small that sometimes I just prefer to pick them up with my hand. And that's a nice clump of 4 right there. You can see the roots on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one apart just like that. Lift a little soil, put that in there, and I might just decide to get my hands dirty on this one. Might just be easier, quicker. 4 inches, be about here.
So I'm just gonna keep planting them in a grid pattern and we'll see how many we get out of this one. But this is gonna take a little bit, so why don't I just speed things up? So now that we have the bib lettuce planted, I just have 100 more to do. So out of pure laziness or exhaustion, I just figured out a much quicker way to plant these. But let me show you what that is.
So on this batch, I was kind of thinking that if I just took my knife and made a straight line like that, that I'd be able to plant them a little more evenly. And then when I started putting them into the line, I realized these are so small that you can just do that and cover it after.
So sometimes it seems real obvious after the fact. But I'm happy I just figured that out, so now I'm gonna do that for the rest. And since I've now done 2 greens, I can alternate the rest of the way, red, green, red, green. I just had a very close encounter with a bird. I thought it was gonna land on my head. I had a duck